Come on out, Chaser. It's over. Come on out, boy, right now.
Pink Cadillac.
What's the matter with you? You're acting like every man on the street is after my body. It's after my body. It's after my body.
She's out of control.
You haven't slept with her?
Doesn't anybody recognize love anymore? The tensions, the pain, uncertainty.
Her Alibi. 3 movies that illustrate 3 different trends that we will bemoan and deplore this week on this special annual edition of Siskel and Ebert that we call the worst films of 1989. Now, I seem to remember that in years past we literally did pick a list of the 10 worst films of the year, but this year bad films came at us so thick and fast that it seemed more efficient to single out the worst tendencies of the year, tendencies responsible for lots and lots of bad films. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And more than just knocking those pictures, maybe we can see if there's some lessons to be learned, so maybe in 1990 they'll make fewer of them.
Oh, I'm sure we can. Gene, and who are you?
I am Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune, and our first category of lousy films is called actors who think they can do it all, but can't. In 1989, a couple of comic actors tried to write, direct, and star in their own films and failed miserably. The worst of the bad pair, Eddie Murphy's racist, sexist, and deadly dull Harlem Nights, with Murphy and Richard Pryor and Red Fox playing operators of a Harlem nightclub. Here's a particularly badly directed scene, badly directed by Eddie Murphy, with Della Reese off-screen arguing with Red Fox while Richard Pryor asked Murphy to apologize to her for shooting off her little toe.
Hey, Suge, I thought the whole thing was supposed to be, forgotten about.
I don't know if she said that, but I think she still was a little hurt.
She still is. I know she don't show it much, but deep down inside, she's a sweet old woman.
Benny, why'd you put this orange juice in the refrigerator with just a swallow left in the container?
Bear, why'd you leave me the hell alone?
And on the other side of the globe, in Australia, a comedian named Yahoo Serious came up with a ridiculous yarn called Young Einstein, portraying the young scientist as the inventor of both rock music and of an atomic machine that put bubbles into beer.
I'm all right, Mary. They're only electrons.
I didn't laugh once at Young Einstein, but that I didn't get as angry at that film as I did with Eddie Murphy's picture. Murphy displays no idea of how to direct, and the film is certainly something he wouldn't have filmed if he hadn't written it. I can't think of a more mean-spirited film in 1989 than Harlem Nights. Eddie Murphy doesn't have the greatest track record just as an actor in films. Maybe you ought to work on that before trying to direct again. I know there's a big ego thing involved in these guys wanting to direct, and they have every right to try. But what was he trying visually? I mean, directing is a visual exercise. There was no idea.
I don't think Eddie Murphy has any interest in being a director in order to be a director. He has an interest in being a director in order to call himself a director and take the credit as a director. He had nothing new to give us in this film, which is obvious just by looking at it. And even in the trade screenings out in Hollywood, he started getting bad laughs because his name is mentioned 5 times in the credits. Yeah. I think it's time for Eddie Murphy to realize that he has a wonderful talent if he would serve the talent instead of simply serving his ideas of success.
Eddie Murphy must have lots of interesting stories that he has to tell. This wasn't one of them.
That's for sure. Next category, and the next category of bad films from 1989 is one we're calling cashing in, because it's about major stars who decided to cash in on their big public followings by letting their names be used on films that were certainly not worthy of their reputations. We don't mean they were in disappointing pictures or unsuccessful pictures, although that may indeed be true. We mean they let their names be used to sell the public a bill of goods. And number 1 on the list in 1989 was Hulk Hogan, the superstar of professional wrestling, whose name was like a trademark used to sell a disgusting film named No Holds Barred.
I know you out there. And I'm waiting for you.
Before No Holds Barred, Hulk Hogan had sort of a neat image as a muscular good guy. Why would he want to trash that image in junk like this? It's another one of the mysteries that adds up to one of the worst films of the year. Another mystery, not quite so depressing this time, involves another popular cult object, Nintendo games. One of the holiday releases, called The Wizard, is all but a full-length commercial for Nintendo games and tells the story of a 9-year-old video game wizard who doesn't talk but is a genius at the Nintendo controls. Along with his older brother and a young teenage girl they meet along the way, they hitchhike from Utah to California for the National Video Game Championship.
Jimmy begins World 2 again!
The star, Jimmy! Get the star!
The older brother is Fred Savage, star of the TV hit The Wonder Years. There are a lot of disturbing things about the Wizard. One of them is the irresponsible behavior it seems to glorify in showing small and defenseless kids running away from home by sailing their skateboards down interstate highways while trucks try to dodge them. Another is the shameless way that specific Nintendo games, products, and trademarks are slathered all over the screen, not to mention the plugs for the Universal Studio Tour, which also gets a lot of free time. But for true Nintendo fans, the biggest disappointment in this movie is that it exploits Nintendo games without really using them. More time is spent plugging the product than showing it. So what do Hulk Hogan, Fred Savage, and Nintendo games have in common? All of them have an enormous number of loyal and dedicated fans who were ripped off by these two movies.
Yeah, and also in the year Little Monsters by Fred Savage was a picture that opened and closed on the West Coast, which he also didn't really do anything special. And I think in the case of these guys, they so much want to make the transformation from television to the movies, the big time in the entertainment world, that they really don't think about making that transition in a quality kind of way. If these had been TV scripts for them, you know, they would reject them because they really weren't good, but they're suckered into the glamour of just breaking into the movies. And the Nintendo problem, I think, is real simple. There's a good movie to be made with Nintendo products or any of the video game products. This isn't it.
It was already made. It was called Tron.
Tron was a lot of fun.
It was a Disney picture that went inside video games. You shouldn't really incorporate Little Monsters in the same list with this, though. That was an ambitious movie that failed. It was not.
I thought that you talked about irresponsible behavior. I mean, I thought that that thing was in the underworld stuff. I thought it was really cruel. We gave that a very, very negative review.
Yeah, but you're acting as if Fred Savage produces his own pictures. I think Hulk Hogan is more to blame than a young actor like Fred Savage, who is basically out there looking for work.
I think that he has a lot of power within his little world, and he has the power to select good and bad scripts. No, I give him full credit. He wants a full title, his name before the title. Let him take the full credit and blame. Coming up next, the worst in teenage films this past year, as well as pathetic period pieces.
Program on the year's worst movies. This year we're attacking trends and tendencies that have been responsible for more than one bad movie. And our next category is the teenage movie that doesn't take the time to understand or even care about teenagers. There's no doubt in my mind about the title of the single worst movie of the year about teenagers. That was clearly a film called She's Out of Control, a movie that had to be seen to be believed, starring Tony Danza as a dad who has unhealthy nightmares about his adolescent daughter's innocent romantic life. She's just a kid, but he fears the worst, and his fears are so inappropriate and unwholesome that they give the whole movie a creepy quality.
Hi, Katie!
Hi!
Would you stop bouncing, please? And for God's sake, cover yourself, you know. Here, put this on.
Another teenage movie that belongs on our hit list is Dream a Little Dream, which was especially dishonest in its advertising. This was another one of those mind and body swap movies where Jason Robard Jr.'s mind got transferred to Corey Feldman's body. But to believe the TV ads, the movie was all about Feldman, and the grown-up Robards wasn't even in it.
Oh, my God. I'm him.
In this category of teenage movies, maybe what's happened is that the good ones, movies like Say Anything, which is one of the best movies of the year, have gotten to be so good that the bad ones stink even more. I had the feeling with She's Out of Control that the movie not only didn't understand teenagers, it also didn't know anything about adults, about sex, about comedy, or indeed about life in this century on this planet.
I suppose that there could be an interesting story psychologically told of a father who had sexual thoughts or fears involving his daughter. That would be very reasonable.
Yeah, but not in a comedy, and not in a comedy like this, which is utterly smarmy in its whole approach.
I mean, I suppose Woody Allen could come up with a comedy, but this isn't that level. This is really just low-rent, sleazy material. I think the other good point that you make is that there has been a tremendous development in the teenage film, comic and drama. I mean, years ago we could fill up 10 worst lists with just teenage pictures. Now, and I think triggered by Say Anything, you have a whole bunch of films that are very good about the teen years. And so if you're, the lesson to learn out of this category is if you're going to play in the teen world now, you better be pretty good.
Goes even back beyond Say Anything. Goes back 3 or 4 years to The Breakfast Club, I think, with John Hughes, which will turn out to be one of the most influential films of the 70s, or of the 80s, in terms of making teenagers into legitimate subject matter instead of just exploitation subject matter.
Okay. On to our next category called Pathetic Period Pieces, costume dramas that were all dressed up with no place to go, dramatically speaking. And I've often said that making a period costume drama is probably the toughest kind of film to make because it's so hard to accept contemporary actors in old clothes with old-fashioned dialogue. Yet there were 2 20th century period pictures that really were lame for me this year. First, Old Gringo, a well-intentioned but dead as a doornail drama with Jane Fonda waltzing through the Mexican Revolution. Here Fonda encounters a general in Pancho Villa's army bringing peasants into a fancy old hacienda.
Look at how you look at us now. Now that you look at us without fear.
Even worse was Bloodhounds of Broadway, with a bunch of stars playing dress-up, wearing roaring 20s clothes. Here, gambler Matt Dillon and showgirl Jennifer Grey from Dirty Dancing argue lamely about love.
I was just being polite.
Polite man calls a girl after he spends the night with her.
The problem with both of these films is they tried so heavily to borrow interest from the period in which they were set. Take their scripts out of that period, and their stories make little sense. Fonda is for the revolution. Matt Dillon and company are for fun and games and love. Whoopee. These stories wouldn't work if they didn't have the clothes to wear.
Well, you're right about that. You have to have a story to put into the period in order to make it work. But when it does, it doesn't bother me. For example,
it's great.
Recently we saw De Niro and Sean Penn in We're No Angels, which is set in the 1930s. Right. It didn't bother me for a second. It added to the interest of the film. So the fact is, if the story carries it, it's okay. If the story doesn't carry it, then you start looking at the costumes and you start getting distracted.
Absolutely.
And it just all goes right down the drain.
When we come back, this program on the worst movies of 1989 continues with a look at movies that are really TV sitcoms just blown up big on the big screen. And we'll also launch our annual attack on sequels.
All right, suck in the cuts, guys. We're the Ghostbusters.
And our next category of failed film is the TV sitcom on the big screen, or basically a mediocre TV show starring usually a TV actor that someone foolishly got financing for to make into an even worse entertainment when they blew it up on the big screen. For example, look how this scene from the comedy Troop Beverly Hills with TV's Shelley Long as a scout leader of spoiled brats looks and sounds just like a TV show, even with an off-screen laugh track.
What the hell is happening here? This is supposed to be a camp out, not a pajama party. Is this what you call roughing it?
1 bathroom for 9 people? Yes.
We don't even get a reaction shot of the kids there laughing. They just threw it in on the soundtrack. And in her Alibi, Tom Selleck was doing little more than just a bad version of Magnum P.I., playing an amateur detective defending model Paulina Poroskova, accused of murder.
I'm sorry.
Just shut the engine off. Isn't that spraying water hilarious? These are basically all TV actors who accepted bad TV scripts in an effort to make it on the big screen. And what's scary about these films is that it makes you wonder if executives in Hollywood can't tell the difference anymore between what is a TV show and a movie. A lot of money was wasted on Troop Beverly Hills and on her Alibi.
And also a lot of time for those 2 stars, Shelley Long and Tom Selleck, both of whom have been very good in the movies. Selleck in particular in 3 Men and a Baby, and Shelley Long in Irreconcilable Differences, showing that when they get a movie role, they're all set for it. But then people even, I think of them in TV terms, and it'll be bad for their careers if they continue to make movies like this.
I think it's also bad for people in the movie business to think that they can put over a TV scale entertainment and charge a full-scale admission for it. I think the audience is much sharper than people who made this picture are giving them credit. And the film's failed.
Okay, our next category is one that we attack virtually every year on this program, and that's the automatic use of sequels to spin out the life of a hit movie long, long beyond its welcome. Sometimes a sequel can be good. The Godfather Part 2 was good. Sometimes a series can even be good, as the James Bond movies are more or less good. But when a great comedy like Ghostbusters comes along, don't the makers of that film have some obligation to make a sequel that at least tries to live up to the reputation of the original. Ghostbusters 2 was the most shocking sequel of the year because it was the worst. It was as bad as the original film was good. Here's what passed for a joke.
I mean, what a discovery, a psychoreactive substance. Whatever this stuff is, it responds to human emotional states.
Mood slime.
Another disappointing sequel was Star Trek V, by far the worst of the Star Trek movies.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily.
Come on, Spock. Why didn't you jump in?
I was trying to comprehend the meaning of the words.
Row, row, row your boat. You know, when I saw it at the beginning of the film, I couldn't believe it. When I saw they were going to depend upon the fact that they could sing it together for their ending, I was appalled and astonished, but even more so by Ghostbusters 2. Now, you know, people come out to us all the time with opinions on movies. We were right about this, we were wrong about that. I have yet to meet a single person who liked Ghostbusters 2 at all, and yet the movie grossed more than $100 million. That's a lot of wasted time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a picture like that sort of bludgeons the audience into having to see it. And, of course, that's a commercial decision that makes a picture like that, and that's all they ended up with was money. They certainly didn't end up with entertainment. But I want to go back to Star Trek V, because that was, I think, just as bad. And there you see two syndromes working that we've been talking about. The actor who wants to do it all. Now, the way that they were able to rope William Shatner in for the 5th Star Trek movie, obviously, was to give him, as they had done with Leonard Nimoy before, a chance to direct. Well, he can't direct a picture based on that film. Nimoy did a pretty good job.
Yes, he did.
And he did it with 3 Men and a Baby. Fine. Shatner, no way. I mean, it's just, it's visually uninteresting. The story has no sense of pacing. He blew it.
Maybe they're just working their way through the Star Trek cast, giving everybody a chance to be a director. I don't know. Coming up next, it happens every year, big stars who bomb in big movies.
Yeah! A contact sport!
The final category in the special show on the year's worst movies is devoted to big stars who laid great big eggs at the 1989 box office. And one of the biggest eggs was laid by one of my favorite stars, Clint Eastwood, whose Pink Cadillac was one of the worst movies in his long career. He plays a skip tracer on the trail of Bernadette Peters, whose husband wants her back, and that's all right, but why do they have to make the husband a member of a white supremacist army? Racism is too serious to belong in a flyweight comedy like this.
You're gonna try to be a hero? Hey, I'm just a skip tracer. This isn't my fight.
Another big star who misfired was Patrick Swayze in Next of Kin, a silly movie about a hillbilly who becomes a Chicago cop and about how his kinfolk from the hills come north to help him avenge the family honor.
The Chicago police will catch Gerald's killer, but we gotta give them time. We know about city street.
Ask anybody here whether your big city cops ever cared about us, living or dead.
And talk about desperation time at the old screenplay factory. How about the scene in that movie where the women folk pack lunch for the guys to take north when they're going to go shoot those bad guys in Chicago? They all have their little wax paper sandwiches to take with them.
My favorite scene in the movie is the bow and arrow fight at night in a cemetery. I mean, you know, daytime probably would have helped the excitement of seeing those arrows pierce through the air. And I've got two more big stars who really bombed in 1989, starting with Burt Reynolds, who made one very good film last year called Breaking In, but early in this year, he also delivered a stupid little thriller called Physical Evidence, with lawyer Teresa Russell defending him against a murder charge. Naturally, he makes a sexual move on her. Doesn't Reynolds realize that his kind of suave behavior is really out of date?
No way, Jose.
All right, Jose.
Charles Bronson, another regular on this show every year, it seems, checked in with Kinjite, playing a tough detective who is so manly he knows how to trade dialogue with a pimp.
You're gonna eat it. You're gonna eat it, or I'm gonna blow your head off. Open up. Open up your mouth.
Those kinds of exchanges are really out of fashion. Both Bronson and Burt Reynolds have played credible macho guys in the past, but the time for that kind of role from them, I think, has passed, and I would think that they would really do well to try and turn that image on its head in a different kind of drama or action picture. You know, knowing when to get off the stage with a certain kind of role can be as smart as knowing when to get on. And I think of Clint Eastwood, who in Tightrope with Genevieve Bujold really stood his macho guy, his macho police character on edge as a guy who may have twisted feelings about women, and that's what I'm talking about. And Reynolds and Bronson could do it if they wanted to.
Eastwood has had tremendous wisdom about the longevity of his career and what he can do with himself on the screen. He's a good director, and he knows how to handle himself as an actor. But, you know, talking about both the Eastwood picture, Pink Cadillac, and also the Charles Bronson picture, both of these movies have things that really make me feel bad. In an action thriller comedy, really heavily charged subject matter, such as a white racist army, or in the Bronson picture, child sexual molestation, with a scene where the pimp sends his henchman into that bedroom to molest that poor little girl. This is the kind of subject matter that doesn't belong in an entertainment. It's not appropriate. It sets my it sets me on edge because it just shouldn't be exploited in that way.
I think it refers to, you talk about people in Hollywood in screenwriter heaven or something like that earlier on the show, and I think they do lose control of what the audience is willing to accept. These are basically light entertainment, even though they're action-filled. It's still in a kind of a popcorn munching kind of thing, and that isn't something to eat popcorn by.
I think they sometimes lose their sense of proportion. You know, I can imagine a screenplay meeting in which they say, I've got it, you know, the bad guy will be a child molester, but they don't stop to think about the implications of that. It's just all fodder for the mill, and that's what this whole show was. Lots of fodder for the mill. That's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with a special show we're calling Breakthrough Stars of 1990. Some of the actors we've chosen have been in the movies for years, but 1989 was the year they finally got the right role in the right movie, the breakthrough role that's going to carry them on, we guess, into 1990 and beyond. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Snowcaps, Raisinets, and Goobers. 3 big box office hits starring Nestle Milk Chocolate. Moviegoers give them a definite 2 thumbs up. Got a new VCR? Then you need the 1990 edition of Roger Ebert's Movie Home Companion with the special section on black and white movies. Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat. Now with 30 flavors, you can serve it every day for a month and never serve the same dish twice. Redken Classics, hair care products formulated to create beautiful, healthy hair. So effective, their formulas transcend time. Available exclusively at salons.